five figures or so in 2018.
Nice.
And then 2019 was when I reached the six-figure mark.
Hi there, it's Sean from Salehu, and today I'm interviewing Jeff, who started dropshipping in 2017, explored it for 1.5 years, grew his brand to 5 people, and was featured in other interviews and articles such as that of Oberlo and The Beautify. Thanks for agreeing to the interview, Jeff. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Sean, for having me. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm honored to share some information with everyone in the podcast, in the interview. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we really look forward to it. For the first question, could you share a bit of background on your e-commerce journey? I understand that you were on quite a good career path, namely banking, before doing e-commerce.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2017. Just a bit of a backstory. Again, following the very traditional path, I landed my first job at the bank. Worked there for a year or so. And during that time is when I found out about e-commerce in, I think it was late 2017. I read this blog on Oberlo talking about dropshipping, what it is, how it works, how you can get started. And that kind of interested me because, it was the first time hearing about a business model that didn't require any inventory. So I knew that the profit margins were going to be high, the startup cost would be low. So I explored it a bit further while working on that full-time job at the bank. So that's where I got my interest first at e-commerce, and then I worked alongside it while working in the banking job. And then soon, about 1 year in, I actually quit the banking job to do it full-time for about a year and a half in total, like you said. So I guess that's where I got started. I just felt really interested in the concepts and the business model. And yeah, everything just kind of propelled from there.
Nice.
So that's my backstory.
Nice. And how did your store do? Did you start, what was the niche that you started with?
I chose the products and the niche depending on what my passions were and what my interests were. So back then I was really into, men's fashion and grooming and things like that. So I sold a lot of those men's fashion accessory items. So when I first started off. So I guess that was the niche that I kind of went towards and, started to grow from there.
Nice. But I understand that you switched niche. Did the first niche, men's fashion, not work out for you?
Yeah. So funny story is, later after I kind of experimented with e-commerce and, found, almost little success with, men's fashion because of the audience. I soon transitioned to another niche, which was quite similar, but then it was, more towards the female demographic, but selling pretty similar kind of accessories, but more tailored towards women. So there was a slight, change in niche there, but then I guess the interest still remained the same. So
yeah,
a slight
definitely.
change.
Yeah, at least it's still, more on fashion.
Yeah, fashion. Yeah, it's always been something I've been interested in. So, I try keeping at that and see where it went from there.
Nice. And how did it go?
Actually, yeah, after changing to, the women's demographic, I think I found a little bit more success because, first of all, women, I think based on a lot of research, they tend to buy more online.
Yeah.
Not just that, but they have a strong incentive to buy. And they have, they tend to spend more in general as well. Based on our experience, right, as guys here, we know that sometimes we might not want to spend so much online. Do a lot of due diligence, right? Right. Yeah. Especially like technology items, consumer technology, clothes especially, we don't really like to buy online. So then based on that kind of that idea. Focusing on the women demographic would be like a more logical choice if you want to succeed or see some results in e-commerce. So that's what I did.
Yeah, and especially fashion.
Yeah. Fashion is a very competitive niche, as you know, and if you don't have a unique selling point, first of all, it's hard to sell it. Even if you do, selling it to men might not be the most ideal, right, when you're starting off.
Yeah.
So we're transitioning to the female demographic to make it a bit easier. So that's what I
Um,
did.
are you comfortable with sharing, you know, your sort of how far you were able to scale your store to in terms of, so was it a 6-figure, 5-figure?
Yeah, so back then, right, there weren't a lot of success stories because there were a lot less resources, a lot of training and tutorials on YouTube and the courses. So back then, I think I did about 5 figures or so in 2018,
Nice.
and then 2019 was when I reached the 6-figure mark. Um,
That's
obviously
very
we're
quick.
talking about revenue. Yeah, we're talking about revenue here, not profit margins. As people who've been at this game for a while, usually for a dropshipping store, you retain about 20 to 25% of the profit margins. If you're lucky and if everything goes according to plan. But usually it's about 10 to 15. So that's why like we're talking about strictly revenue here. But those were the kind of figures that I did kind of hit within about 1 to 2 year mark. Yeah, mainly focusing on the women's fashion niche as we mentioned. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, but was that your first and last store, or did you have more that you
Yeah.
tried to create?
So yeah, that's a good question actually, because it's technically was my first ever store, but then I kind of changed the niche because the name was basically the same, but it's just the niche I changed within that store. So
Okay.
then you could say that it was my first ever store, but then within it, obviously there were a lot of changes. The niche, the products, the design, the branding, the social media posts, things like that. But yeah, this is, I guess you could say, it was the first store.
Yeah,
So
nice.
I got kind of lucky, I guess.
I think that also something that a lot of, you know, aspiring e-commerce entrepreneurs would like to ask is, how much budget did it take, right? Like, how much
Yeah,
budget did you start with?
yeah. So this has been a question that's pretty commonly asked, I would think.
Yeah,
Back when I was making videos, I was also making videos based on what people want to see, right? So, and a lot of the questions that kept coming up was, how much do I need? What kind of budget do I need to actually successfully start a store? And the straight up answer is like, obviously the more the better, right? Because you have more budget to work with, not only in terms of advertising, but also setting up your store, making a custom design store, hiring some freelancers maybe to make a very premium logo, maybe setting up a very premium looking social media account, things like that. A lot of that requires a lot of budget, right? So
yeah.
obviously the more you have, the better. But if you want to start from scratch, the learning curve might be a lot more. You have to learn a lot of the things yourself. Um, but it is possible, and you can start, I think, with maybe around 1,000 nowadays, one to 1.5K, I would say.
Is that what
Um,
you started with?
I started with, I think, 1K back then, but then obviously a few years ago it was a lot easier because the
Yeah,
competition wasn't as fierce.
true.
And now, things are getting harder. People are getting more, the market is getting more saturated. Products are getting more saturated. The market is getting more
And
saturated.
I think
Yeah,
customers are getting more intelligent as well.
yeah. That's a good point too, right? Like nowadays, people they aren't stupid when they shop online. We know, or at least I know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, when someone is owning a drop shipping store, you can tell like, oh, that smells fishy,
Yeah.
especially when you see a product page, you're like, this item will be sent in like 30 days, and they're using e-packet, for
Yeah.
the delivery method. So things like these, you know that people are drop shipping, and like you said, customers aren't dumb; they're getting more intelligent. So it is worth more, more of your effort to spend on perfecting your store, making sure it doesn't look like a drop shipping store, and making sure, once something is working, you want to invest in logistics, working with a reputable supplier. So, like that, something like that.
Yeah. Um, but you were also in a very popular niche, which was fashion. Are you willing to share what you were your best selling products and how were you able to differentiate yourself? Because fashion is so competitive. It's so
Yeah,
competitive, and like the fact that you made six figures from that store is it's incredible. So how did you differentiate yourself in such a crowded market, and what
yeah,
was your sort of winning line of product?
yeah. Obviously, I won't get into the specific details of
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
kind of item I was selling, but
Yeah.
basically it was like a category of products that was selling well, and so I focused my efforts on that category of products within fashion. It was in the women's niche, and basically, when you try to sell items, the concept is the same throughout whatever niche you're in, right? You want to have a USP. So what that is a unique selling product, right? Unique selling point, sorry. And that means you have to find a product that's like differentiating and someone unique, when something that catches your attention when you're your target customer jumping online. So that was what I focused on. You had to find a product that has a USP. Um, it's the same across all the niches, but that's what my focus was on for that fashion accessory. So then I focused on finding one product that was selling really well, and try to sell other products that was similar to that. So that would enable a lot of cross selling opportunities, especially since those items that I was selling was a passion product. It wasn't something that solved the problem necessarily, but it was something that the target audience and the demographic was very passionate about. And so that's what I did. I added a bunch of products that was very similar, and then made the store into a very reputable, branded looking kind of store. And then later on, kind of invested in, logistics, finding really quality suppliers, good branding and packaging and things like that. So yeah, I guess coming back full circle is finding products that work already, and then try to find similar products like that to sell.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you made. Sometimes it's not that the product is so special, it's how you present it. It's the
Yeah,
presentation. It's
yeah,
like the angle.
yeah, exactly. People always see, what's the angle, what's the marketing angle. For example, like let's say you're, for the ease of, you know, understanding here, we're trying to sell a problem-solving product. You know, that product might solve one particular problem, for example, your back pain. But then if you focus on another target segment or another target customer, they might not be looking for a product that can solve back pain because they don't have that back pain. Maybe at the same time, they might be looking for something that helps them. Let's say, for example, this product helps them ease their back pain, but also helps them sleep better. So you could use sleeping better or like insomnia as a pain point and as a marketing angle to sell that product. So it depends on what kind of perspective you're looking at it from, and it's really less about the product as a result, but more about how can you position a product such that it can catch your target your customer's interest. So
Yeah,
it's a good point, right?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, there are some angles that, these like big companies, they just didn't see it that way. So I think that market saturation, yeah, it exists, but but it's always going to be there. That's the thing. So as long as
Yeah,
you, think
yeah,
innovatively, you should do fine. You like leaving the banking space. I wanted to ask you about that. How did you know when you could leave it?
yeah. So I think that's also a really good question, because a lot of people think that if you get into entrepreneurship, it can replace your job, right? Not only in terms of your income, but also your lifestyle. Once you get into entrepreneurship, you can completely change your lifestyle. But it's a very common misconception, because what people need to understand, and I'm speaking from personal experience, is that at least the first half year is going to be really tough. And until you can find a way to generate income, and not only that, but do it sustainably through at least half a year or so, you shouldn't even consider quitting your job. It should never be a replacement of your current job or lifestyle, but rather a supplement. So what I mean by that is you have to work on your side hustle to the point where it can generate you enough, and ideally, more money than how much you can earn in your full-time job in order for you to quit it. I think that's the safest route for people who are considering getting into full-time entrepreneurship. When you work a full-time job, you work 9 to 5, or in some cases, you might work longer, like 9 to 6, 9 to 7, depending on the job nature. But if you work in entrepreneurship, you work whenever you have to work, and we don't count hours. It's based on a necessity and a business need. And so you could be working 12 hours, 15 hours if you need to. But obviously you can manage your own time, but you need to work based on what you need to do, as opposed to clocking in and clocking out on a full-time job. But what's great about e-commerce is that especially owning your own e-commerce store, is that whatever you put in, that you're going to get out. You know that something is going to get out of it, and it's for your own good. It's for your own benefit. So whatever you put in, the amount of effort, that, let's say maybe it's money, maybe it's the branding, whatever, that whatever you put out, you generate is a direct result of how much you put in.
Could you go through as well how you found your suppliers? How did you make sure they're reputable? Did you get them from AliExpress? And did you transition from dropshipping to wholesale? How did you go about that, supplier-wise?
Yeah. So I had my own approach to doing it. So in the first couple of months, it was just I would find products. It was more about the products that I want to sell rather than finding the vendor that sells that product, if that makes sense. So it was very product oriented. So whichever vendor holded that product, I would select that vendor. I've also done some research on Sehu, prior to doing this interview, and I know it's a fully integrated platform for people to check out different products, do a supplier assessment, find sometimes maybe even find a copy as well that's relevant. All for like a fee, a small fee. I know you guys are SaaS, a subscription as a service, software as a service, sorry. And those kind of services, they provide a lot of value because they don't have to, your stakeholders don't have to look around for different information. You just find all the information in one place. So
as for marketing, what were the experiments and key things that you've done?
So in digital marketing, we like to use this. We like to mention and we like to use this thing called A/B testing, right? I'm sure you've heard of it. It's basically you have two variables that you want to test out to see which one is better, and you do them not really in tandem, but also you do them separately and see which one yields better results. So that could be in terms of the landing page, like your product page, or it could be in terms of your ad copy or your ad creative. So using a different photo or like a different copy. So that's what I did. I did a lot of A/B testing with product pages and then with different ad copies to see which one would work better. So that's another kind of useful marketing technique that which you can use. But I wouldn't say to do it very early on. Obviously, at the end of the day, product and marketing is still king, but once you found that product that is working well based on your data, that's when you can kind of explore the A/B testing, and especially in relation to your marketing efforts.
When it comes to marketing, that's such a big expense for beginners, and a lot of beginners, they're starting with $200, $400, $500. How would you approach it with a $500 budget? Or would you not approach it with a $500 budget? Would you save up first?
Yeah, that's a good question. 500 nowadays is a bit steep. I think unless you actually know what you're doing and you've done hefty research on proper branding, how to set up a store properly with good, good design, then it's going to be hard to have a $500 budget, honestly. If that's the case, if you have no launch, then I would probably wait until you have like 1.5K or something
1.5K.
to invest.
Okay.
Yeah, well, at least 1 to 1.5K before you start investing. Especially in this day and age, it's going to be really competitive, and we
It's
don't
really
want to get
expensive.
yeah, it is really expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look from the grand scheme of things, starting a business with 1K, 1.5K USD isn't a lot, because
Right.
you're already cutting
Yeah.
down inventory. You don't have to hire staff to do that. It can be a one-man band. So grand scheme of things is not too bad, but I guess on the other side, of the coin, if you really want to start with $500, I would probably, find the product first that works. Focus on the branding stuff on your store, and then I would use influencers,
Okay.
but not Instagram influencers. But I think now the trend is to use TikTok influencers.
Yeah.
I think that's the trend nowadays, and I think there's still a lot of potential, and the rates are not too bad right now. Obviously, your due diligence and finding a suitable and eligible in TikTok influencer is another story. Once you find the right one, I think there's going to be a lot of potential. So that $500 can be spent majority, majorly from TikTok, I would say.
Just a follow-up question to that. How do you allocate the budget though? Right? You set up your campaign. It could be, influencer outreach, or it could be a Facebook ads campaign. How do you allocate the budget?
Yeah, so I would say as a beginner, you should focus more on shout outs, influencer shout outs in particular, because the vendor, the assessment and the criteria is much easier to understand and grasp. Whereas if you're using Facebook ads or even Google ads, it's a lot more technical,
Yeah.
and the learning curve is a lot steeper, which means that your opportunity to fail and lose more money is a lot higher, right? So definitely, as a beginner, you would want to focus maybe, I would say, at least 60% of your budget on influencers and stuff, making sure that you find the right ones, and then maybe 30 to 40% on learning Facebook ads, learning Google ads, maybe even Pinterest ads if you want.
Yeah.
Especially just learning the ins and outs, and perhaps how the algorithm works. What constitutes a good copy, or what constitutes a good maybe just an ad creative, right? You want to benchmark off other brands as well, see how they're doing. So yeah, it's more of a learning curve. That's why those kind of media buying platforms might be a bit harder, and something that you should spend less money on.
For the closing question, I wanted to ask, how do you think drop shipping or e-commerce will change over the next 1 to 2 years? A lot of things have changed. TikTok, there's just been TikTok. Facebook has been getting so expensive. Yeah, what are your predictions, and how do you advise to adapt to that change over the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this before in the previous questions, which is if you want to start in this day and age, I think you should focus heavily on branding, focus heavily on making sure that your design is in place, your branding is in place, your social media, the branding is in place as well. Making sure that the store is credible and reputable. And from there, you already have a good foundation in place, right? And from there, you can start investing in, quality, influencers or marketing on Facebook ads, whatever. But I think the foundation should always be set in this day and age, especially considering the huge, the saturation of different dropshippers, not only from Facebook ads, but also, a lot of dropshippers are doing Google ads now, and it's getting so hard. And most people are picking up on what dropshipping is and how, what are the very distinct characteristics of dropshipping. So the product pages might be a bit scammy, fishy. The copy might be like directly from AliExpress or whatever. So you want to have that foundation in place before you do anything. Do a lot of research on that before you actually go ahead on and focusing on your marketing efforts.
This was a really great interview that I think a lot of our viewers will love. Thank you so much, Jeff, for all the value-packed information. I'm going to leave Jeff's channel in the description below if any of you want to learn more about Jeff and follow his journey. Thanks, Jeff.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Sean. It's a pleasure.